Good morning, everyone. My name is Rahul Singh. I am the Regional Engagement Principal at the National Security Innovation Network, part of DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit. And we are here today for the Indus-X Gurukul, the educational series under the Indus-X banner, cornerstone of our partnership with the Indian government and teams, where India, U.S. primes, government, and startups come together. Specifically, the Gurukul Educational Series is really inspired by the traditional Indian tradition of propagating education, and the focus really here today is around a broad understanding of testing and eval between the two countries. And so with that, I will hand it over to Anmol Sehgal, who is our friend at IDEX. Please, Anmol, go for it.
Thanks, Rahul. Thank you so much. And good evening to everyone in India and good morning to everyone in the US. I'm Anmol from IDEX, DIO in India. And as you all know, that IDEX is driving the Indus-X and all the related initiatives from the Indian side. And our joint goal is to strengthen the defense industrial ecosystems in India and United States by promoting innovation, accessibility, and resilience for our startups across borders. So one of the prime initiatives under this umbrella is the Gurukul Educational Series, which has been designed to support the innovators and startups to navigate through the defense ecosystems across borders. And through this Gurukul Educational Series, we've been coming up with various kinds of awareness building sessions, wherein we call upon experts from government, from corporate, private industry, incubators, accelerators, and our aim is basically to equip the startups with the knowledge and necessary resources to excel in the realms of defense innovation, right? So, and it's really wonderful to see that we are at the fourth Gurukul session today, which is happening on the theme of understanding testing requirements and access to research facilities between India and US. And I'm sure, and I think that we all agree that testing is a cornerstone for any kind of product development. And for any product to be deemed reliable or effective, it needs to go through rigorous testing mechanisms for, maintaining the high standards required, especially for defense agencies, right? So I think today's session is surely going to be a very interesting deep dive into understanding the critical aspects of testing requirements and the workings of research facilities in both the countries. So I'm really hopeful that you all will have an enriching experience with our esteemed panelists today. And now with that, over to you, Samir, who's our moderator for today. He's a senior fellow at USIP. So over to you, Samir. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anmol, and thanks, Rahul. Appreciate Ensign and IDEX's leadership on these efforts. I've benefited tremendously from listening and attending the Gurukul session. So it's a privilege to be able to moderate one of these. I have the fun and easy job of being able to just tee up my colleagues, Air Commodore PK Chaudhary and Mark Thompson, to talk about their insights and experience in testing and evaluation. And so I will turn to them each individually to introduce themselves and their institutions and sort of the relationship to the testing and eval world. And then I've got a set of questions, but I'm sure you all in the audience have a number of questions as well. So you can input those in the Q&A function, but I'll start off with a few questions for each of them. But first, over to you, Air Commodore Chaudhary, please.
Good evening to the friends from US. Good morning to the friends from US, and good evening to our colleagues and members from India. I am an air veteran from Indian Air Force, and I've got about 37 years of experience, initially starting from the maintenance of aircraft. Then I have my experience in design and development with the ADA, Aeronautical Development Agency, where I looked at it, the maintenance evaluations of the system. And then testing was one of the important part when you are developing a product and looking at the life cycle management of the component. So my interest became managing the product life cycle, understanding the user's requirement, building and leading the team and the group who all are engaged in this. So with this, the practical practical tasting aspects we have seen through, and we have worked on that. So with this, we'll go ahead further as the moderator provides the time and discussions on this part.
Great, thanks. Mark, over to you.
Hey, good morning and good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Thompson. So for all of the signatories to this agreement on the U.S. side, well, we are a kind of collaborative in our own right. So I'm representing FathomWorks. I work for one of the partners of FathomWorks. There are two, soon to be three, naval laboratories that are part of FathomWorks, which is a part of Indus-X. We have a NAV-C component, a NAV-Air component, and NAV-FAC component. I bring that up because we're naval laboratories. We're not, Navy units that can deploy and go operational. We are scientists, engineers, researchers doing testing and evaluation. And what's unique about the FathomWorks component is we have kind of all of the domains. NAV-C, so anything kind of surface Navy, shipboard, autonomous systems. NAV-Air, aircraft and air-mounted weapon systems, communication systems, and then NAV-FAC, naval facilities, bases, ports, kind of all of the land-based Navy. So we have kind of all of the domains represented within the FathomWorks partnership. And then also, locally, we have a big exercise program and a large prototyping facility. So all of the partners, including our non-government partners, we have a commercial port, a small business incubator, and an economic development nonprofit for our area. So we try to bring a lot of resources to anyone who would kind of step foot in the door. And we hope to offer that to all of the Indus-X folks as well. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Senator Commonwealth. So let me start off with a big picture question for you both, and we can go one at a time. So how do private companies leverage testing and evaluation in each country? And maybe what are some of the gaps that we've observed that maybe brings us to the point where we need a function like Indus-X or even a function like FathomWorks? Maybe Eric Commonwealth, you can talk a little bit about also your institution, FSID at IISD in Bangalore.
Can you repeat? Actually, I have not clearly understood that. What is your key point you want to listen from us?
Love to know how private companies leverage testing and evaluation in India specifically, and what are, if any, gaps in that process. Okay.
You see, the startups which all are there, the FSID is basically an incubator. We have about more than 150 startups with us. So the tasting and facilities which all are available in our domain means Indian Institute of Science. We have got a lot of laboratories. So the process are fairly simple for them who all are there. And I had, through Anmol, had forwarded the list of those things also with you. But the gap, when you look at the actual gap, sometimes it becomes when your product is getting developed and you want certain tasting at certain time. So you may not be getting a slot to do those tastings. So your time becomes very crucial. Second, things become that many times, since you are not in connect with those test labs, so designing a test profile is also very important. So when you reach to those lab, then you come across that these all things has to be performed prior, then only this could have been done, because being a startup, working out on those aspects is also important. When we are talking about developing a test for a system, that should be a part from the beginning. From the beginning, when you're developing your product, during the product development or critical design stage itself, you should start looking for that what all tests you are requiring. So these gaps have been found among the a few of the people for our Indian test labs, and that is uh, means taking care of that. Somehow there is not a very composite or concrete or central agencies. We have started, as I shared with you, the government of India has started an iSTEM, where all the test facilities should be registered and come onto the central agency. And all the people who are required to requisition those tests, they should go register themselves, put their requirement, but it will take some time to streamline those type of processes. IIC also has in the lab similar processes, but the preferences are given in IIC for the academia, means if there's some project work is going on by the student or PhD holder, so that will be given the first priority. So in that, those gaps are there. And outside also, we try to look at it, the agencies, but those become little costly for the startup. The finance also plays a very important role when you look at the startups carrying out a test. So at this stage, I find these all calls for a consortium where we all can pull in and look at it, that how it can be made better.
Great, Mark. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on sort of the sort of private company access to testing and evaluation. Also, as a point that Eric Chaudhary made about getting sort of understanding user requirements in thinking about design and testing evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the highest level, the goal of the 3 Navy laboratories that are involved in this is we're trying to increase and diversify the defense industrial base. A lot of what we're doing as all of what we're doing as FathomWorks, and most of what we're doing as the Navy labs is with the non-traditional, the non-primes. It's not the Northrop Grummans, it's not the Boeings, it's the small companies. And we have the ability and even the requirement to work with startups, small companies that need kind of closer access to what are the problems that need to get solved. How can we, kind of play matchmaker with the problem havers and the solution providers. So that's really what we're trying to do as an organization, with kind of FathomWorks being the front door to a variety of kind of defense problems. So how companies can leverage testing and evaluation opportunities and resources on the government side. With any of the Navy labs, they have cooperative research and development agreements where it's the Navy is committing to share resources, and venues and the personnel and facilities. If you're working in a field that's of interest to those labs, then those are agreements they can enter into with foreign companies. So that's always a good opportunity, and it brings the company a lot closer to kind of the issues at hand that the labs care about. There's also a variety of exercises. I know just on the West Coast, there's Coastal Trident and a variety of advanced naval technology exercises. You may have heard of some other exercises that are a lot more pass fail. We want the really high TRL that it's off the shelf and it's ready to buy now. A lot of the ones that we run, it can be the first time the prototype has ever been outside the lab. Great, we're happy to have you. It can be the first time you've ever put something together after filing a patent. Great, happy to have you. In anywhere between there and the final product. There's no pass fail. We try to get you and your technology in front of potential end users and customers. It's not an acquisition event, but we're there to help you, help the companies get some feedback. They're designing something for it's a Navy shipboard component, and they've never talked to a sailor before, or they've never talked to somebody in the Coast Guard before. Great, we can make that kind of play matchmaker and get the right people in the room to give them some feedback on their technology. And then all of the partners of even FathomWorks, we all have our own unique test venues. So it's hard to list everything out, and I won't try to do that right here. But every Navy laboratory, the commercial port of Wainimi is an awesome resource for companies. If you need to get stuff in the water, you need some infrastructure. It's a very forward-leaning, innovative organization that is willing to test new technologies. So we have a lot of kind of partners in our Rolodex that we can offer to people to leverage testing and evaluation. Because what we see is the gaps. I mean, there's the competition with the bigger companies and the primes. But I mean, our model at FathomWorks is prioritizing the needs and the requirements and opportunities for small companies. And if you're working on a defense related issue, we don't there's no fee. You can use the lab, you can come and use the equipment there if you need. You can participate in these exercises at no cost, because we know it's challenging for the small companies when it's everyone's you're a brand new company starting out and everyone's still trying to get your money, and that's not how we want to operate. We're trying to have an open door, so that the small companies get the same fair chance that any other company would. Really, just to lower that barrier of entry, into the kind of defense space. So I think that's how we can help to close some of that gap is our goal.
Can I ask, with permission of the moderator,
Please go ahead.
Question. Actually, what happens when you are in a tasting lab? First of all the tests, when they are performing for innovative development, it will not remain the same. They have to work out a test profile. They have to work out a test script. Then when we talk about a lab, when they are going to with their own product, so they will require certain artifacts. They'll require certain test things. I'm talking about the physical component. When prototype you're talking about, I'm talking about physical component testing when it is required. So how you cope up with that? Because which I brought it out a gap. When my people approach to the lab, then they approach to their components, it requires some time for them to get those things manufactured, and those will become a manufacture one of the cases. So what we are trying to work it out on these aspects, that we can look at the consolidated requirement, and there can be optimization of this can be done with a consolidated purpose basis, like universal type of mount, something can be worked it out. So I just wanted to inquisitive that how you are going to work out on these gaps, like test scripts may not be same for all the purposes, all the components and all that. So how you are working on that aspects there?
And yeah, I think that relates to a question that I prompted in my mind when you were talking, Mark, which is sort of bandwidth, right? I mean, you're trying to lower the fill and access, but sort of what's the prioritization as well in this process, so you're not sort of overwhelmed in terms of bandwidth.
Yeah, so I mean, each Navy laboratory is going to come out with its strategic priorities for for the year, for 5 years, for 10 years, and yeah, there are going to be some projects, that it's say a relevant thing that the Navy cares about, but it's just not going to hit that priority list this year. So I mean that is the unfortunate reality is the actual time bandwidth of some of the researchers that would be collaborating, of the the test schedule for certain venues, certain test venues, like we have the control systems test bed here at NAVFAC. So it's a team of really smart scientists and engineers that are testing all cyber components to facilities, and the cybersecurity for facilities. So they've got a queue that they're working on. They test the software, they push it out, and then they bring in the next thing. They can have a little bit of a longer lead time to get in, and they got to prioritize accordingly and for what they're getting funded for. There's a lot of other resources, there's a lot of other testing venues that they're kind of just sitting there, and there's really no lead time. As if the technology is ready to get plugged in, we can plug it in today. So it'll be a little, the answer of course is it depends. depending on what the technology is, what the field is. What we're able to do is there are the formal agreement types, like a work for private parties agreement, where I mean, if a company just wants to leverage a facility, they don't want collaboration, which is fine. You know, you want to just the Navy has a unique facility like our deep ocean simulation lab. It's where the Titanic cameras were tested. It's a resource not available in industry. A company can pay the government to run those tests, and you get your test results back. There's no collaboration. You don't have to worry about exposing your intellectual property. We're not involved in your project at all. So you can do it very transactionally like that, and you're paying for guaranteed time for exactly what your test requires. On the kind of more collaborative side, there's the cooperative research and development agreements where there's going to be a team of Navy folks, or the Air Force can do the same, Army can do the same. A team of government folks that are helping you develop your intellectual property, that are giving you access to some of these testing resources also. But you're going to have some other folks kind of tiptoeing on your project. If that's not a problem, great. I think those types of agreements have their place. And then kind of even on the less formal side, like the Coastal Trident exercise, we are setting up the testing evaluation venues based on what the company asks for. So that's a unique one where you don't have to try and fit into what we have planned. You don't have to try and fit into some convoluted scenario that looks very Hollywood, and we're trying to see where a technology might fit into it. We want to hear from the company to say, what testing venue do you need that would showcase your technology? And then we set that up and invite people to observe if that's what the company is interested in. So we have from like very formal, and if you want the time requirements, the space requirements, the exact testing configurations that you need for your technology, great, we can have that all documented. Those are a little bit more transactional. And then on the spectrum over towards Coastal Trident, you're not paying for it. There's no formal documentation process. It's like, hey, we're going to come set a playground up for you to see what your technology can do. So we kind of have both ends of the spectrum, and I hope that kind of addressed your question. And that's where we would definitely want to have kind of one-on-one conversations with some small companies, and we'll want to plug you in where it works for you. We don't want to throw you into an exercise if you don't feel like you're ready. That's great. We can do it, more in the lab, a little bit more prescriptive, and take out some of those variables. So kind of all over the place. We have a lot of different options because we are a lot of different organizations, but we're happy to discuss what the company's needs are that we can, put them in the right spot.
Maybe I can pick up a little bit from that and turn to Mr. Chaudhary. Can you talk a little bit about the military services involvement in this design support and product development that Mark was alluding to? Is that something that is starting to happen in India with Indian startups, or are they sort of on their own to kind of navigate potential user requirements? So you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So the product, when for military purpose is going to be made, you get a requirement document from the military services. The product specification requirement, and they even specify you the standards. Generally, till date, we are referring to the standards more with the MIL standards, which they are referring to that. Now, that's why I was talking about the relevance of the lab, where our startup will like to integrate themselves, because it sometimes what is there, fit and forget type. Like if I can give my component and somebody tests and brings it out, gives me the result, that may not fulfill the requirement, because suppose the result is wrong, at what stage it went wrong, how it went wrong. So this is required to look at it, because in military, generally we have got a monitoring team who will be there with your product development all the time. Like here you find IDEX is there when they are looking at the startup there. And then we as a PI, we call it a partner incubator of the IDEX. So we look into that, and we look into the process as it is progressing. Like when I was there in Aeronautical Development Agency also, there will be a team sitting there. And whatever testing you are carrying out, whatever facilities are available in the military parlance, those will be provided to you. And those, there you can formulate your test profiles, formulate your test designs, and those will be performed. But if you are going through and laid down standards, like you are doing a regulatory compliance, or you are doing certain standard certifications, those are already laid down. So those documents we have also created in India, like we are talking about. We have also got a standards available, because we have amalgamated it, combining with all the requirements. Because we have got a harsh temperature environment, I am talking about. We have got a harsh like a Rajasthan, and then we have got even for a Leh and Ladakh, or even for Kargil and Thois type of weather. So when we are talking about environment, sea environment, what we talked about more or less remains the same. So there you will always find guidance from your military side, who some of them DRDOs are there. They provide you the guide also. There are military certification agencies also. We have who lays down the process, are laid down. So you carry out as per that, and they guide you also in these all aspects to take you forward. And they have got a identified lab. They have got an accredited lab. So in those lab you carry out. So the issue comes up where certain profiles which we are developing now, innovating now, that falls beyond the scope of all those labs, which is not available in India at present. So those becomes an issue. Or if somebody is doing certain projects in US, and then they have to undertake those trials, then these becomes an issue. But here, seamlessly, any military project or any defense project, the military provides you the support, and they have even identified lab available where you undertake those trials at the present. But startup, why we are discussing this point for the startup? Well, in this, few of them are innovations. So innovations which was not done earlier, and when it is coming up, so we find that these types of lab to prove these particular products, either you can say quality, either you can say the engineering aspect, or the customer's requirement itself is not getting met. Regulatory comes subsequently. You see, when we are talking about testing, that's why I was asking him, when you carry out, you make it out a test script. So you look at it, that you will have a just basically risk mitigation, you will have a customer's satisfactions, you will have a regulatory compliance. Then as a startup, you like to do a cost reduction also. You will not like to over design the product and give it to someone, because it will be costly for you. So you try to mix these all together and work it out a test script, where at certain phases you do not repeat these tests, because that costs you again. So these type of things we are trying, that if can be worked it out with certain organization which is not available in India, where I can combine this, somebody can guide us in doing the test script in this way. So that was the basically there. But in India, we have got certain limitations which we discussed with you, because if I'm going for innovations, those area may not be available at present with us.
So both of you alluded to elements of government labs, and I wanted to ask about sort of that connectivity. So I heard Mark earlier talk about CRADAs, and Mr. Chaudhary talked about DRDO's sort of role in some of the testing evaluation. So can you speak more broadly about the connectivity between government labs and private enterprise in leveraging some of these facilities?
See, the orders are there of government today, not only the DRDO lab, even the many labs are available with the services. Like I am from Indian Air Force, so I was from Indian Air Force. So Indian Air Force has also got few labs which is available with them to the type for their product. So government has given these instructions that industry can do those activities there. But the processes, as you know, today are a little lengthy. So people try to look at it that where it can be done faster, because those comes priority will be first doing their own job, then only they will provide you those labs. Like DRDO labs are also of a similar nature, because they have got their own orders, they have got their own development products. So those becomes a little delayed in the civil parallels. So there is no independent lab sitting there where you can undertake commercial ventures like that. But however, there is no restriction as such, which I have come across, that there is no restriction that you can't do that. However, you have to pass through the formalities. Those formalities you go through, and then you can undertake those trials, tests.
Mark, is there some sort of a similar process for companies that sort of utilize FathomWorks facilities and then can go on to other FFRDCs or UARCs, or are they interacting in some way in that T&E process?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually kind of hit on some comments that my colleague just made a second ago. So obviously we're navigating the Department of Defense can get confusing. It can seem overwhelming. That's the role of the labs. So you have the requirements, the kind of the problem holders are fleet units. They're deployed ships. They're groups of Seabees. They're a facility out in Guam. The requirements are out there in the fleet. They're collecting those, consolidating, and publishing those. And they say, hey, government labs, work on these problems to find the solution in 5, 10, 20 years. So the role of the federal labs, the Navy calls them warfare centers. If you see that, sounds intimidating. It's a research laboratory. They just happen to call warfare center. We are trying to connect those fleet problems. Like, they're out doing real world things. They're deploying. They generally don't have the mechanisms legally to work with companies. That's where the labs come in, or the warfare centers come in. We can take the problems from out in the fleet, the people out there doing work and keeping us safe, and we have the ability as a designated federal laboratory to work with companies. So we're trying to be the connection point for those things, because we are the types of organizations that can work with companies. So what we're looking for really is, if companies can tell us what you're looking for. We have those formal agreement types. We have some less formal exercises and stuff. We are not going to try and just shove you into a particular corner. Tell us what stage you're at. Tell us what you're looking for, and we want to find that appropriate agreement, level of effort, the right level of exposure for you. We often have companies that it's a new prototype, and like, hey, I think this will be great for, say, the Navy in 5, 10 years, but we really got to work some stuff out. Great. We can still give you that same opportunity with no risk of failure, or say like bad exposure, just because you're working stuff out, and that's great. And you're just as welcome to come back every single year and participate, and it improves every year, and that's exactly what we want to see. I feel like there's another part of your question that slipped my mind right now, but yeah, the point is the Navy labs are really trying to connect with the fleet problems and communicate them, which is the tricky part. Nobody likes advertising their problems, but that's where the labs come in. Like our control systems test bed doing some cyber work, or our desalination test facility. We have companies testing prototypes at our desalination site, and they know the requirements for the Marine Corps and the Navy of what they need for large base size, or forward operating base size desalination, down to like backpack carry desalination and everything in between. they have those hard requirement lists, and they're testing small companies and prototypes to those specifications and giving feedback. So yeah, that's kind of the role that we play, and we're happy to do that for a variety of different technology areas.
Maybe I can pick up on one particular area. You had referenced CRADAs with foreign companies, and I wonder if you could sort of talk a little bit through that process and maybe sort of demystify it for potential companies that are on this call. How do you go about getting one? What does that sort of get you access to in terms of facilities or research and design? So what's the scope of that?
Yeah. So as far as all of the legal jargon of a CRADA, that's all it's all publicly available. You can search navy.techtransfer.mil, I believe is the website. Sorry, I'll look it up and I can send it out to everybody. But that the legal jargon of it is available. The templates are available. The meat of a cooperative research and development agreement, or a CRADA, is really the statement of work. Now you see statements of work in contracts. It's a little bit different. So it's truly meant to be collaborative, and it's not transactional. So the first kind of disclaimer that I threw out there for cooperative research and development agreements is both organizations have to see a mutual benefit, that we are willing to contribute, paying our people to help you develop this technology. The caveat that I like putting out there first is there will be no dollars sent from the government organization to the company. Now, that's not to say there's no benefit or no resources, but it's not going to be, there's going to be no checks written by the lab to the company. But we are not charging you for access to a lot of for most of the venues. There's an asterisk there. There are some, if we're taking a ship out, sometimes you may have to pay for something like that. And we have ways to minimize that cost. But the idea is we're sharing our time, our facilities, our intellectual property to help a company develop in an area that they care about. So the general process for there's cooperative research and development agreements and limited purpose cooperative research and development agreements. And that really comes down to the statement of work. We ask the company and the lab's scientist, engineer, researcher, kind of what is your ideal project? If you just had you could research this freely, what would you want to do? What resources do you want to use? How much is it going to cost? Like, let's get that on paper. And we're talking, this is like a 1, maybe 2-page document. This is not a super intensive thing. Bullet points of what you would like to do. What is the company doing? What is the government doing? And then what are you doing together? Because obviously there's things you're going to do separate. And we're really taking that statement of work. I or my counterparts at other labs will get the right agreement type for you. But it is really not meant to be, it's not like a big government contract where, okay, we're going to be in back and forth negotiations for 2 years, 3 years, and then maybe it gets awarded. This is not meant to be like that. This is meant to help both the government and the companies learn and benefit from sharing each other's resources. There are, in the terms and conditions that you can see online, I know there's, if you type even just like sample CRADA, you'll get publicly available ones that you could read through. The intellectual property protections are a big thing, especially for small companies where you're not going to have a legal team fighting those battles for you. Whatever either party brings in, you retain full rights to. That is your intellectual property. The government can't and won't infringe upon that. Now, the nature of collaboration, any it's called subject inventions. So any invention that comes out of our collaboration. So while we are working together, you bring component A, we bring component B. Together, we're testing it out in the field, and we're like, oh, we kind of invented this new thing, product C. We retain government use rights for, and we will pay for filing that intellectual property, which is the patent application, which is an awesome cost savings. So we will file a U.S. patent that the company will retain rights to. So intellectual property always comes up as a hot item, especially well, for companies of any size. Everybody wants to protect it, rightfully so. And that's the benefit of a CRADA, is it takes that risk out. You can collaborate, you can share resources, but even with it getting out there, out in the world and getting exposure, you don't have that risk of infringement on your intellectual property. So those are the main things. The government can't legally write a check to a company retaining full rights to the IP. And as far as what the agreement looks like, comes down to you, the company, and the principal investigator that we will match you up to. Again, that's my job to kind of play matchmaker. And that is what really shapes the project. It's not, again, like you have to fit it into this box. You tell us what you want to do, and we can write that statement of work that addresses and hopefully solves your needs.
That was super helpful in eliminating that process. And just I'd mentioned that there's a number of a couple, at least, Indian companies I know of that publicly have signed CRADAs with U.S. Air Force and are doing testing evaluation with Air Force Research Labs. Sorry, Air Commodore Trojan, I know you wanted to say something. I just want to quickly let the audience know that the Q&A queue is open, so please feel free to post your questions there. I have a couple more, but I want to make sure we get to audience questions. But before that, Mr. Chaudhary, please.
What do you want specific something from me, or I have a few questions from what he spoke about a little bit to
why don't you go ahead?
Indian partners. Yeah. So actually, what I have heard from him, you see, it is a matured system which is in place with you, where I find a very little room. You have to toil around to identifying the process, to identifying the risk in the system. Because you see, when we talk about today, I am discussing these all points I am discussing from the point of view of not established company. I am discussing from a point of view startup, when they come up and they are developing a product. So their main aim is only to meet a requirement. So, but generally we all know that the identifying the risk is a very important while you are developing a product. Because today, when we look at the product development processes, the product which is developed, when we talk about tasting, the first question comes, why do we require a component to be tested? People say that it should perform, it should give a performance. So what I heard from which is undergoing at US, you have got a full established process, and established companies look like they are coming there. But what we are facing here a day out, that we require a process, a lab, where there can be giving them way to understand also that which I talked about, the design for tasting, the how to design for tasting, what all are the route to realize their product in a correct way. It is not only when we talk about the risk analysis. Risk analysis may not be only on the failure of the component. The component itself can give you, when we talk about EMI, EMC tests, it is not that EMI, EMC is of the failure of the component. It is for the neighboring component or in the environment where you are going to do that. So these all types of things also required to be studied by these startups, because startups who all are coming up, they are very new, and this environment which is coming up in India today is quite new. So when we are talking about in this education series, we want that this type of established process which is there with you and how it has been evolved, if it can be shared, by the Fathom works, so then it can be of a great Fathom, right? Then it can be of great help to people there to work it out their mindset. Because see, they will approach, because you have got established process, they will approach you. But before approaching, they must know that are they ready for that, or what is the aim of the tasting. See, in one of the cases, in the last discussion, we found one of our startup, they brought it out. They require an anechoic chamber for doing that certain tasting. It is a straightforward thing. But today, what we are facing, that they want that the test facility is available with you, but how am I ready for that test facility? What you call for it? Preparation, like when we go for certain environment, certain place, how he should prepare his product to be able to do that particular test. Because this part, which I was trying to request, that it can be worked it out. When we are discussing that a person, when he, because I had in mind to bring it out, that how we carry out a new product when we are going for a very new and from very beginning, to analyze that what testing is to be carried out, which I brought it out, that we carry out a testing for quality, we carry out for testing for its performance, we have customer satisfaction. So we carry out a risk analysis also. Today, risk analysis, a very misnomer subject everybody takes and goes around. So what is the criteria for that? That also we are looking at it, that how it should be worked it out on that. So, and then when I go to certain lab, they provide him the better knowledge that yes, when you are coming here, then these all things should be carried out. Like, see, when we look at the EMI, EMC, I will go with a component and I will go to certain lab with my equipment and tell them to carry out a EMI, EMC. It may not be suitable, because I have to look at it, each sub part. Have I taken those things to be carried out? Has this been carried out? And this lab must be having those criteria to be intimated to the startup or to the company, because lab also will not introduce your component direct for EMI, EMC carrying out and providing you those currents and those environments, because your product may fail immediately. So there will be preconditions for that. So these all things for a lab also we request that can be discussed here, so that can be enriching for our people.
Mark, I don't know if you want to address some of those comments, but I can also sort of add a question, layer a question onto this, which is more broadly talking about access requirements for any lab, right? Even for a private entity to access a private lab, sort of how do we think about those access requirements at either of your institutions? I mean, Mr. Chaudhary alluded to the sort of the preparations, the pre-preparation to ensure that there's that a company is ready to make use of that test facility, and they have sort of certain design inputs necessary for that. But I wonder how you, I mean, we've kind of talked about the process of this, but how you adjudicate access.
Yeah, I can start on that. So, you know, again, the FathomWorks component of a couple of Navy labs, and then the commercial port and small business. There's also a lot of other organizations that I don't want to speak to, like some of our university partners. I'm sure they have their own processes for it. But that being said, FathomWorks is not on the base. There's a Navy influence to it, but it is very deliberately not on a government installation. That allows us essentially to give access to anybody. It is behind a gate. There's a security guard there, which is nice. We don't have people wandering around that we don't have a theft problem. But there's an access control, but it is not a government facility. So it is FathomWorks is located there so that we can bring on companies and academia to collaborate. So the Navy folks can come over from the base. It's 5 minutes away. And companies can come in the gate too. So it's a secure area for that collaboration. Now, if say you're doing a CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, there may be components of that that will be up to you and the government lead, may require you to come on base. If you're testing at a particular facility on base. Now for those, there's some paperwork and some lead time. Being in our case, a foreign national, Indian national, is not a problem. But there is going to be, you submit your name, they're going to do a background check and then get you on base. So we've had companies doing kind of follow on CRADAs. So they've been working with the government for 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, because they're continuing to develop, and that's great. And we're some of those folks have been able to get, like a government access card, and they're able to they'll show their badge at the gate and come in to do their work. For some of these that are shorter term, you're just going to do some on and off testing for 6 months or a year. For the bases, generally they're going to have to be escorted by your government person. They'll come pick you up or kind of vouch for the industry folks that need to come on board. Or we really evaluate, can we do this testing off base? Can we use the commercial port? The base is right on the other side of the commercial port. It's the same water. There's a lot more requirements to do things on the government side than the commercial side, but it's essentially identical facilities. So, can we do things on the commercial side to avoid some of those access requirements and restrictions? So we try and reduce some of the risk there. Most of our exercise program, our Coastal Trident program, which you can find on the FathomWorks website, we have some info on Coastal Trident. We use a lot of commercial vessels, the oil rigs offshore, commercial facilities, public facilities that are representative of government sites, but avoid us to do things a lot faster because we don't have to then worry about the lead time of getting background checks and security clearances and all of that stuff. So you can get the testing done that you need on a more publicly accessible venue to avoid all of that, the lead time and paperwork for that. So very dependent on the facility and what your work is. If it's something the government person can take your technology, take it on base and test it and then give you the results, we don't, you don't need to worry about access at all. If you want to be standing there, then we'll have to kind of navigate that case by case basis. But we have a lot of ways to not get around it, but try and avoid that hassle for companies, which can be burdensome on time and resources.
Thank you.
So we got a question in the queue that I'll pose now, and then I want to get to a broader question about the U.S.-India sort of facility access. But the question that was posed is, will the testing facility and its engineers help the startup in defining testing procedure itself, for example, a new and innovative product, or will it just do testing defined by the startup and nothing more? So I think this is sort of the broad question we'll be getting about design support.
Yeah, I'll.
Mark, I think you froze for a moment. Mr. Chaudhary, do you want to try to answer that question first, and then
Can you just repeat the question?
Yep. Sure. Will the testing facility and its engineers help the startup in defining testing procedure itself, for example, a new or innovative product, or will it just do the testing defined by the startup and nothing more? I guess you can reflect on that in your own Foundation for Science, Innovation, and Development.
Okay. See, when we are talking about the testing procedure for any, that's why I was talking to them. That first, it is the designer who has to look at it, that how he is going to produce that particular component. But the basic requirement for a test is that, which I have repeated earlier also, that you look at it from the quality point of view, that that whether it is meeting the quality criteria for that product. Then risk mitigation, which we brought it out, that you have to analyze your product's risk. There can be risk which can be products failure, which we carry out FMEA and identify the risk of failure, but there can be functional risk also. When certain components are functioning, is it affecting the neighboring component? So that is a risk mitigation. Then you carry out a customer satisfaction. Customers gives you requirement. So each requirement, you will work it out a point to achieve those requirement, what he is expecting from your product. If it is a customer given design to you or given order to you, then regulatory compliances are there. And which I brought it out, the cost reductions. Therefore, you have, that's why I brought it out, that when you design a product, you go to a critical design stage. There you take all the stakeholders together. All the stakeholders means your user, who is going to use it, your designer, your the manufacturer, who is going to manufacture it. So these all will sit together and will work it out, that you first understand your product, analyze the requirement. When you are analyze the requirement, there will be functional requirement that it should deliver you this product. There will come some non-functional requirement also. What is non-functional requirement? That if I am running this particular product, then heat is getting dissipated. So have you designed in my those things? Have I to test those parts also, that it is within this limit? So like that, he has to work it out, this whole gamut himself. First, he's working out that, then he brings it out, that whether it has to be carried out first, if suppose a system is there, system has made it out of, say, 20 components. Then each component he's testing individually. Then he will carry out a integrated testing. Then he'll carry out a system testing. So this all test profile he has to define. Then he has to work it out a test script for this. Then he can work it out that which test lab will be suitable for him for all these many test facilities. That's why you set up at your lab, which is a production required testing, which is not a testing, a composite testing, where you have to do the regulatory compliance, or where you have to do a certain standards compliance. So with these methods, you can achieve a total test profile. After that, you can go and discuss with the standard lab, put up your design profile, then he can bring it out to your route to realize your product.
Mark, I think you're back now. You have a point on this as well?
Well, I might have missed the last few things that were said. I think I was talking to myself. I didn't realize I had frozen. So I think I know where I left off, but I don't know.
You got cut off and basically couldn't hear you from the beginning. So if you want to go ahead and answer that question, that's good.
Sure. So we're talking kind of testing requirements, and then if we need to develop kind of the testing evaluation process for a new technology. So hopefully it's not too much rehashing if I did cut off at this point, but if we're doing the kind of we call a work for private parties agreement, where a company would be paying the government to just say, hey, here's my test that I want done, just run this. We will run the test at our facility and we'll just give you the results back. And that's essentially what you're paying for. One type of agreement, a lot more prescriptive. If it's a new technology and like, hey, how do we test this? We don't really know what all of the applications are. We don't really know, what type of levels we need to test to get to work towards the actual requirements from the fleet problem holders. That's exactly where a CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement, comes in. Some of the active CRADAs that we have now are trying to figure that out, because it's innovation. It's a new technology. We don't really know all of the do's and don'ts and how this technology works and how it integrates with other systems. Like, that's exactly what we're trying to figure out. Generally, the work for private parties type stuff, where you're paying for your test results, essentially, it's they're new technologies, but in kind of an established market, in an established type of system. And we already know what the test requirements are. Like the desalination stuff is a common example, where we know what it needs to be able to do in order for the government to say, hey, that's awesome, and I want to buy it. So we're running it to those specifications. There's a lot of technologies now that all of you folks are working on that, hey, this solved the problem, but this is new. This is a groundbreaking technology, and we don't really know how to compare it to those requirements. And that's exactly what a CRADA is for. The technology is new, the process is new. Hey, let's figure it out. Let's find out how to run an experiment that compares it to the requirements from the end user. So that's 100% something that CRADA would be an awesome fit for.
Okay, that's super helpful. I know we have just hit time, but I wanted to see if the host would indulge us with one more quick question. Just more broadly, I'd love to hear about sort of the vision for how we take the FathomWorks approach and this roadmap to create linkages between U.S. and Indian test facilities and testing access for startups. What for each of you, if you can sort of offer a minute on what you'd like to see with this going forward, and maybe this is sort of the vision of Indus-X, but it'd be great to sort of articulate that for the audience.
Sure. I mean, the way I see this is there's so many facilities that are in our own backyard that are right down the road, and often we have people spinning in circles like, how do I solve this problem? How do I test this technology? What opportunities are there? And like we just don't know because we don't talk and we don't interact and collaborate as much as we should. So I mean, my hope for all of the Indus-X efforts and everything that Indus-X is doing is being able to highlight these different organizations and all of these opportunities. Maybe it doesn't solve all the problems. There's a lot of other organizations out there, but the fact that we have all of these players coming to the table and saying that, like, I have a piece to that puzzle that I can offer to a company is incredible. So often, even on the government labs, we only, we look internal and we just like, oh, these are the resources we have, and that's it. Like that's the finite limit of our capability. And now, like we're in the last couple of years, we're really starting to look outboard and looking Navy lab to Navy lab, Navy lab to small companies, to universities, and we're getting, I think, a lot better at sharing our problems and also sharing the wealth. And it's really exciting to see. So I'm hoping, FathomWorks is going to be a small component of that, and we're looking forward to helping folks out. But I mean, it's an honor to be working with this organization and all of the other folks on the U.S. side, hoping to provide some opportunities to everybody. So it's really exciting. We're glad to be a part of it, and hopefully we can solve some of those problems.
Thanks. Air Commodore Chaudhary, could you offer a last word on sort of your vision for Indus-X?
See, we have discussed earlier also what I feel a practical approach, a pragmatic approach, what I feel at this stage. What we are progressing is correct. First, to identify and cataloging the facilities, whatever is available, which we can share for all the establishments. Then the main important is establish a contact point or the processes by which it can be accessed seamlessly by the startup. Not going in a lot of bureaucratic approach. And we should provide other costing also, that what is going to be the costing for that. And if it can be broken down, which we discussed with you, that Indian side may require certain test design capabilities also for that. And definitely what we discussed just now, he brought it out also. When you are going for a new design, somebody will look for it, and somebody even look for it validation. So this is the third point. Then we should have a regular this type of mentorship program where we can discuss these points, bring it out to them that this is the way we are going to work out on that, because putting this cataloging and doing that, many of them may not come to know immediately. So that is the process which I feel in short should be given impetus at this stage to take it forward.
Thank you for that. I think with that, we should close it out. It's been a great discussion. I really appreciate Mr. Thompson, Mr. Chaudhary's insights, and look forward to future Gurukul series where we can learn more about different components of the broader Indus-X venture. Anmol, Rahul, any final thoughts before we close it?
Yeah, I was going to say there's I really wanted to thank everybody. I know it's for Mark, it's very early, but Commodore Chaudhary, thank you very much. We're looking forward to working with all of you. Samir, thank you so much for moderating this discussion. I think at one point we had a really, really solid deep dive. And so I really appreciate everybody and our friends at IDEX, DIU, and SIN, from everybody here. Thank you all very much.